Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy and welcome back to the second part of this tutorial on string functions, the most commonly used string functions that you should know. So in the last part we looked at string length, substring and string to lower, how to use them, a couple of examples and also where they should be used as well. Now, in the next part, we're going to be looking at a couple of functions that sort of sanitize data, and then we're going to be looking at some output functions as well to format output how you would expect to read it as a human, essentially. So you probably don't know what I'm talking about, but we'll obviously get to that. Okay, so the function I'm going to talk about now is HTML entities. Now, HTML entities, let me just go to my browser and clear that, is a function that converts characters into basically HTML entities. Now, if you don't know what an HTML entity is, then I'll show you. I'll clear PHP here. Now, let's just say I wanted to do a copyright sign. No, I'll say a quotation mark. So that. So here's a quotation mark. At the moment, it exists as a quotation mark. When I refresh the page here, you can see it's appeared. Let's go ahead and view the page source. You can see it's just a character there. So that's being essentially picked up by my page. For example, if I did script like that, this is an entity, this is an entity. If I then did source equals, these are two, sorry, they're not entities, they're characters. These are two characters. Now, there's obviously a problem with being able to allow this kind of data onto your page. For example, if people are posting to a database and then that database, you know, that database content's being retrieved and placed on a page without someone checking it beforehand. If I was posting a comment to a website and I did script like that and then ended the script like that and inside perhaps did alert hello, this would be used by the page. So let's go ahead and refresh here. You can see that I get the alert dialog hello there. So we're basically injecting JavaScript onto the page. And if you're you know, sort of let's just go ahead and PHP this. If you're going ahead and sort of echoing this kind of data out, again, let's just escape them. No, let's turn them into double quotation marks. If you're echoing out code that stays stored in your database from users, when you refresh, you get the same result. Even if you're echoing it out, you get the same result because this is recognized by the page. So I'm going to create a variable called fromDB, and that's going to be equal to this. So we're going to imagine that this has come from a database table that your users have been posting to. So, you know, someone that wants to mess around with your page has come along and they've posted this in your database. Now, an HTML entity, for example, let's just go ahead here. I'm going to say and QUOT and then a semicolon. So what I've now done is I've created an HTML entity which represents a character rendered by the browser as opposed to as part of the page content. So when I refresh, you see we get a double quotation mark, but when I view the page source, it exists as this. Now, because it exists as an entity, it means that it won't render on the page, say like this, script. So if, for example, that was and QUOT like this, and I refreshed, you can see nothing happens, okay? It's not working, it's not letting me do anything because it can't render that as JavaScript, okay? It can't recognize that it is JavaScript command, it's malformed. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the HTML entities function, which just sanitizes that data and converts any characters into HTML entities. So I'm going to say sanitized equals HTML entities, no underscore there, entities, make sure I spell it right. So sanitized equals HTML entities from DB. Okay, so you saw earlier when we echo out from DB, we get the problem where we have this script alert. Now, when we use sanitized equals HTML entities, so we're creating a new variable to store this, and then we're converting this to HTML entities, where HTML entities exist. Obviously, characters like A, L, E, R, T won't be converted because they're not characters. Well, they are, but they're not special characters. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and echo sanitized. So when we echo sanitized, before HTML entities was applied, we'd expect an alert dialog to come up. However, now when we refresh, interestingly, it's just been displayed on the page. Now if we right click and view page source, you can see that that's because we've got this less than sign converted to an entity, which is and LT and a semicolon. Then we've got GT for greater than, we've got the two quotes here which I showed you earlier, and then a less than, a greater than as well. So it's the browser has not recognized this as JavaScript, it's just displaying the HTML entities and the characters. So extremely useful if you're creating a guest book, a blog, or well, a blog's your own content, but anything that a user might be able to post this kind of data to, you need to sanitize it with HTML entities, and that's why it's an extremely used function, particularly in work where you are allowing users to post content. Okay, so that's HTML entities. I've pretty much summed that up. Go ahead to php.net and the manual and read more about it. The next one we're going to look at is another sanitization, but not really anything to do with security as much. However, it is really useful in validation and aiding validation, and that is the trim function. Now, there are varieties of the trim function. We have L-trim and R-trim, and if you haven't already guessed, this trims white space from the left, the right, or both sides of a string. So let's say name equals Alex. I'm going to echo the string length of name. Okay, so as we've seen in a previous example, this will give us 4. So let's go ahead and refresh, and we've got the number 4. Now what happens if I add a space at the end of my name? You'll see that instead we get 5, and again if I add a space in front of this, we get 6. So we've got a problem here. Let's just say we wanted a user's length of user's name to be under a certain amount of characters. So if the string length of name is greater than 5, for example, or greater than 10, echo your name is too long, else echo your name is just right. Okay, so if the string length of my name is greater than 10, then my name's too long. So when I refresh, your name is just right. Now what I could do is I could say put a load of spaces in there, and your name is too long. Opposite, you could have validation issues, because if your users can just go ahead and put a load of blank spaces in, then you're looking at potential issues, particularly if you had, say, username, if strlen username equals 0, echo please enter a username, else echo just say fine for now. So username, if it's blank, we'll get the error message, please enter a username, because it's equal to 0 characters. If I type a username, it says fine, but if I type a load of blank spaces, as you would expect from the previous example, it still says fine despite the fact I've refreshed. So we've got a problem. The way we tackle this is using trim. Now obviously you can trim from the left, the right if you want to, but if you need to trim and sanitize, you can just use trim. And I'm just going to wrap this and place this inside another function. So I'm using the trim function on username, which will get rid of any white space. Then I'm computing the string length of it. So if I type Alex, as you'd expect, this is fine. With Alex and a space on the end, it's still fine. However, if I just type a load of spaces, what's happened is it will trim all these spaces out, and we'll be left with 0, Therefore this here will render true and this block will be executed. Okay, so let's pop a load of spaces in, and it says please enter a username. So again, for sanitizing, making sure that your users can't trick your forms, we've used trim to trim the white space from the left and the right hand side. Again, like I said, there are the L trim and R trim, but personally I've never used them. There might be some cases where you only need to trim from the right hand side, but you know, for general use that will be extremely uncommon. Okay, so the next is number format. So let's go ahead and take a look at number format. I'm going to create a variable called number, and that's going to be equal to 1000. Okay, so if I echo, let's say you have number pounds, so this will show you have £1,000. When I refresh, you have £1,000. Okay. Similarly, we could go ahead and put a pound sign in there. Remember, we're not going to use a symbol. Let's just embrace the HTML entities, and we're going to say and pound and a semicolon. So let's go ahead and just get rid of that, and let's refresh. Now you have £1,000. It looks fine, but it doesn't look perfect. Let's just say you wanted to show, you know, that your user had a certain amount of money in their account, for example, if they were allowed to add money to a website, which, you know, many buying websites do, credits, anything like that. This looks, you know, fine, but it doesn't look, you know, perfect. We want to use number format to format this. Now, number format I've used for two different uses. I'm going to show you this one first, and then I'm going to go ahead and show you another. So you have a certain amount of pounds. Now what happens if I use the number underscore format function on this, and then I choose, let's just say 0 here. Now what's going to happen is, first of all, number format is going to change this number somehow, and then 0 I'll discuss in just a moment. For now I've kept it as 0. Now when I refresh, check out what's happened. It's added a comma in there to correctly represent this number, 1000. Okay, so that's the first use of number format, if you want a number to look normal. So let's just say I had £1 million. So 1, 2, 3, is that a million? Yeah, that's a million. So, okay, when I refresh, you can see it's added another comma. So it formats a number correctly, so it's human readable. I know it's human readable anyway, but it still looks, you know, nice. Now, obviously, if you're going to be doing this, it's probably better to use a number like. So we're storing a number as a digit, and then what we're doing, or sorry, storing as an integer. And then we're saying number formatted here. So we're saying number equals 1 million, number formatted equals format this number so it looks right, and then showing it. So what we can do now is we can still perform operations on this number. For example, number minus minus, which will take 1 from the number and leave us with £999,999. Still obviously formatted correctly. So we're storing an integer of this so we can modify it, but we're also then formatting the end result so we can display it to our user. So that's the first you know, way I would use this, and the most common as well. But the second way you can use it is to add decimal points to a number. So for example, let's just say we had a number that could contain a lot of decimal places, and that one of the numbers would be pi. So let's go ahead and say pi equals pi. So pi equals pi. We've created a variable and we've got pi. Let's go ahead and echo pi out. And let's go ahead and refresh. Now you can see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, blah, blah decimal places. Let's just say we wanted 3 decimal places, okay? So I'm going to say pi short equals, okay, now number format comes back in. So we're going to use the number format function. We're going to use pi as the number that we're taking in. Now we're going to specify the amount of decimal places we want. So as before I put 0 and I just wanted a whole number, now I'm going to use decimal places and I'm going to say I want it to 3. So the result that we should now get if we echo out pi short is going to be 3.141. So when I refresh, 3.142, because what number format actually does is it rounds up or down as well. So it's quite clever in that respect that you don't need to worry about rounding it yourself, or doing anything clever. But that's it really. So we've formatted the number, it's automatically rounded it up, and we've got a shorter representation of pi. Okay, so I'm going to cut the video short here, and in the third part of the tutorial we're going to look at the NL2BR function. It sounds complicated, but it's not as complicated as it does sound.